You're listening to Ace Comicals. I'm Greg, joined by my co-host Leon. Let's do this! Hello everybody and welcome to the 93rd episode of Ace Comicals. Today it's just me and Leon.
Hey.
Yeah, so how have you been, dude?
Not too bad, man. Like, as of everything in this quarantined, diseased world, time is like contracting and expanding at the same time. And one day becomes 2 weeks and vice versa.
Yeah,
How about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing okay. I have finally managed to get back to my LCS and pick my stuff up. My local comic shop reopened finally.
What was it like?
Oh man, it was all right. They had, the 2 meter distancing going on, tape on the floor. Everyone has to wear a mask, which is cool because it's all safe and everything. And if you pick something up or touch something, then you have to put it onto a special shelf so they can leave it for a bit out back and then put it back out when it's safe, kind of thing. So
Yeah.
everything's done. They've got like safeguards in place and everything, so it's safe to go in there, which is cool. So I was able to go in and pick up 10 weeks worth of comics.
10 weeks,
which wasn't as much as I thought it was going to be, actually, because I was expecting to come out with like my own short box or something, but actually it all fit into a bag. So
I guess it's like free comic book day.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, it's because I slimmed down a massive amount before this whole COVID crisis hit anyway.
Yeah.
So I had already like cut my pull list down and I'd started going digital for a lot of it. And it was nice to go in there and have those conversations again. And, like it was good to be back. And they were glad to see me as well. It was nice to be able to chat with the guys that work there again and just shoot the shit about comics.
Yeah, I bet they're glad to be open.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, it's just nice to have that kind of like that community spirit back, I guess, if you understand.
Yeah, was the place covered in spider webs?
No, it was nice and clean.
There were no ghosts.
No ghosts, but. Because I live in Leicester, it's like been like extra time. So we've had like added time for for lockdown. So I had to wait even longer than the rest of the UK. And yeah, it was nice to get back in and, like walk home with all my comics and stuff. And it was cool. I picked them up on my way home from work. Because I've had a week, I'm into some holiday now, so I'm having a week off because it was my birthday on Friday. So
belated happy birthday.
Thank you. Yeah. So I picked up my comics the day before my birthday and came home, and it was just nice, and I just felt so much better having been able to do that, and so much more relaxed. And I don't know why that made such a difference, but it did. And I've been catching up on my Turtles comics, and I've been able to massively identify with Mutant Town. So what's going on with Turtles at the moment is a bomb went off in New York, a mutagen bomb that turned everyone like in a certain radius into mutants. And then what they did was they walled that part of the town off, and they're keeping them quarantined.
Wow.
So that was happening before. This is like something that was like happening sort of post issue 100, right? So we're now at issue 107. And I've been catching up on that because I picked up this huge stack. So I've had like months of Turtles to catch up on. So my first job is catching up on all my Turtles books. So I've been catching up on that and I'm like, I know how this feels. This is like being in Leicester. It's like, except they're still allowed to go out and they have music shows and things, and we don't have any of that. We just have this walled up ghost town kind of thing.
Yeah, because what part of like New York is it? Do they specify?
It's downtown Manhattan.
Oh, downtown Manhattan. Wow, can't catch a break.
Yeah, It's around that kind of area, I think, because it's like they have like these like music venues and things, which I guess are supposedly. I think, is that where CBGB's is?
I don't know.
I mean, yeah, I don't know either. I don't know New York that well. I just know that a lot of Turtles takes place in New York, and they mention Northampton, and they go to Northampton for a bit. And I know that a lot of it probably takes place in downtown Manhattan, like a lot of things do. So, yeah. But they have like music. There's a music venue there, and there's a metal show that they go to in one of the issues, which is kind of nice. And it's good fun, yeah. So, I mean, other than that, not really been a lot going on because I've been just trying to keep myself occupied at home. So, I've been plowing through Netflix, and I've watched the entirety of Transformers War for Cybertron now, the first chapter, Siege.
So what is this? A Netflix thing?
Yeah, this is the Netflix War for Cybertron. So what Netflix have done is they've done this original animated show, a Transformers show called Transformers War for Cybertron, and it's in 3 chapters, and it's the Transformers War for Cybertron trilogy, and the first 6 episodes is called Siege, and that's chapter 1. And it's okay. It's a cool show with some cool Transformers designs, much more in line with my tastes as far as Transformers go. Because as you all know from listening to me on the show, I prefer things closer to the Generation 1 look. I like them chunky and clunky. And I would probably say that I'm a bit of a lapsed Transformers fan because I haven't really kept up with what's been going on in media with Transformers recently, aside from the odd few comics. And I know, as a lapsed Transformers fan, that to some people this will be offering nothing new. So, like, it's another story set within the war on Cybertron, and like, it's doing things that have been done time and time again. It's not doing anything groundbreaking or new with Transformers. It's just another story that is following those beats, if you get me. The war on Cybertron, etc. And there's been like War for Cybertron stories before and things, and this is all stuff that has been these are all story beats that have been used before in various different places, like even down to some of the characters arcs and betrayals, etc., that happen during the show. It's all things that are well-known things that have happened before and aren't surprising anybody that would know things about Transformers. But for newcomers, it'll be a blast. It'd be a great entry point for anyone new to Transformers if you wanted to check it out. It's really, I mean, it's a fun show anyway, and it's quite nicely animated, and I enjoy the designs. I enjoy how mean and snarly Megatron is in this. He's really cool. But like I said, if you're a long-time Transformers fan and you've kept up with everything hardcore, then this is going to be nothing new for you, but it might be cool for you to watch anyway because it's more Transformers. But if you're someone brand new to it, then check it out because this will get you on board with Transformers, I guess is the way that I look at it.
Yeah. So someone like me who only watched G1 and say the movie, like that era, it sounds like it captures a bit of the feel of that era.
It does, yeah, it does.
But like modernizes it a bit.
Yeah. Did you ever play the Xbox 360 games?
No. I think I played a PS2 game. Maybe I played a 360 game. I remember playing a demo or something.
Because there was these like War for Cybertron 360 games. Which were really cool, actually. Yeah, for sure. Definitely in the look of the show and the designs and everything else. I would say that definitely for people that, I mean, if it would be like a nostalgia trip, I guess, for people like that maybe have just watched the G1 stuff. And it'd be a good avenue back into Transformers if you're a lapsed fan, like I am. I mean, I think I kind of fell off the wagon largely because of the base stuff, and I think I had my Transformers and I just wanted to just like, this is my Transformers, this is what I like the G1 stuff, I like the G1 toys because they're cool, the comics are good, and that's as far as I want to take it, I think. I'm not deep into the fandom as I used to be. Like I used to be like a prolific collector and everything. I've got like a loft full of the toys at my mum's house. Which but yeah, I need to
So,
it was a cool way back in for me, I guess. It was something that was
were you
enjoyable.
keeping up to date with stuff like Beast Wars and stuff like that?
I had been.
Hmm.
I watched some of Robots in Disguise. I think like where I truly stopped watching episode like keeping up with it properly was probably around the Transformers Armada time.
Hmm.
Because the toys were cool, and then I kind of just fell off, and then that was
That
it.
was around like the first or second movie,
Yeah.
wasn't it?
Armada Energon sort of time. Yeah, I mean the movie stuff didn't do anything for me at all. It wasn't my Transformers because they weren't. I don't know, just something about it wasn't great. But I was like really into Beast Wars and stuff, and I think it was more than anything what attracts me to Transformers. It's not the story itself, actually. It's the toys.
Hmm.
I
They are
really
cool
like.
toys.
Yeah, I just really like the design of them, and I like looking at them, and I like the mechanics behind it. You know, like being able to like transform things and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
like think about that's still quite mind blowing that they
Yeah,
made toys that could withstand kids regularly changing them from robot to vehicle, and they like held up.
yeah. Well, that's Japanese engineering. But that's a story for another time because obviously these were originally another toy, like the way Transformers came into the West. It was another toy line in Japan, and they
Yeah,
brought it over and they like rebranded it, kind of thing.
as was common.
Was it? Yeah, that was its beginnings, and that was. But there's a documentary you can watch on Netflix about that, the toys that made us, which is got all of that in it. But yeah, so yeah, other than that, um, oh yeah, silent films. But like, and The Color of Outer Space, which I finally watched as well. I mean, I'll collect my thoughts on that and come back to that on a later episode because I want to watch it again a couple of times. But it's a really good tribute and adaptation of the original tale, and I need to watch it again to fully form my thoughts on it. But I very much enjoyed it, and we'll probably come back to it in a couple of episodes, like I say.
Yeah, that would be a good one because Rahul's watched it as well, so it'd be a good one for us to pull our thoughts together.
Yeah, love me some Nick Cage. So yeah, Nick Cage hamming it up.
Yeah.
You've been watching anything recently?
Well, yeah. I mean, I had while you were being arty farty, I was being arty farty too. But like the true art, Greg, the art
You
for
know
the
what?
modern age.
I was going to say, I feel like you mention these far too often, these films.
No, wait, I had not spoken about any of these movies in a long time. I can assure you that. But what happened is that I had so in the run up to like Endgame and The Rise of Skywalker, I had like watched all the movies in the row up to that point, and then watched the last ones in the cinema. Blah 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 blah. And then since then, I've had Disney Plus since it launched in the UK, and I've rewatched the last movies of each of those again multiple times. In the case of Endgame, but then now that we're at the stage where it's the collection's complete, I started to watch them like out of order and like just random movies that I was interested in, which I've spoken about on the previous cast. But like, I think I'd watched Captain Marvel just because I was like, oh man, don't know. I was just in a hunger for like an okay movie that I'd only seen once or twice. So it's like I went back, watched Captain Marvel, and then that had me thinking, man, I want to watch Wonder Woman. I haven't really seen that movie. I missed it in the cinema. I think I'd seen it once before, and I was like, okay, let me go back to that. And I watched Wonder Woman, and yeah, my feelings on it were completely the same. Except that I find that I think I soften a bit on movies, on especially like blockbuster comic book movie 4-quadrant stuff. I think I soften on it the more watches go, because it's not like I have high expectations going in, but I just find more stuff to like, and the stuff that I don't like as much bothers me less, but it's still there, type thing. And so, like with Wonder Woman, I felt the same about it. I'd probably give it a 3 out of 5 or something like that. And it's got some fun stuff in it. I don't really like the showdown with the bad guy, blah blah blah. But I don't know. It's a fun movie to watch, especially when you contrast it with like a lot of the Marvel movies, which have quite a muted color palette and quite low contrast images. And like Wonder Woman's got some like cool, like they actually use color. And I know that I find with the DC movies, they go for more of a mythic thing, which suits the characters. Even if they don't really stick the landing on a lot of the story and character stuff. But watching Wonder Woman, that got me thinking, oh, Matt, like, maybe, maybe, no. Okay, maybe I should watch Batman vs. Superman. And it was a weekend evening, and I was just chilling out, and I thought, why not? Let me watch Batman vs. Superman. And I don't do things by halves, so obviously I watched the Ultimate Cut again, which is like 3 hours. And I rewatched Batman vs Superman, and it's really interesting watching it again, because obviously I don't have a lot of love for the movie, but I think what's happened is that in the run up with all this Snyderverse stuff, as we'll call it, the DCEU, but it was mostly shepherded by Snyder's story choices and casting from Man of Steel onwards. The problem that I had with these movies is that I think that, like we said during the Watchmen episode recently, that the guy has got a good eye. He knows how to give you a beautiful shot. He knows how to recreate a panel. He knows how to film action, which is kind of rare for someone in Hollywood. And he's very good at an iconic visual. Even if it's a little bit flat, it still looks cool. And that's what he's great for. But what he's not good for is like character. And I think the big issue I had at the time is that with Man of Steel, which after BVS I went back and watched it. So yeah, I did it in reverse again. But like there's so many good ideas, and I can see what they were going for and like trying to do, and I think at the time it was bad. It was a horrible pill to swallow, because it's like, this isn't Superman. That's what it feels like. Like, this isn't Superman. Why was he doing this? Why is he acting this way? And then that's doubled down on in Batman vs Superman, and then it's compounded with Batman, and it's like, this isn't Batman. Like, what is this? This is just nihilism, boring nihilism, but like packaged up for kids. Like, what is this? But now that we're past that, and we've got like a new Batman being made at the moment, it kind of helps you step back a bit, and you can be like a bit less precious in terms of, because the way how it feels sometimes, especially before the MCU got to where it was, is that this could be the last one for a while. Is how it was. So if they mess up this Spider-Man movie, we're not going to get another good Spider-Man for ages. That's how it feels. So when like you're sitting by and you're like, oh, we're wasting a decade on these bad interpretations of these characters that I like, it feels bad. But now we're sort of past that, especially past Justice League, though the Snyder Cut will be released next year. That you can sort of step back and then treat them more like comic book runs, where it's like, oh, this writer and artist did this run. And like at this point, who cares about canon? But it's like, I can now appreciate the movies as like different takes on these characters, while not worrying that, why is Batman killing all these people? And I know he's killed, blah blah blah, but it just feels like in what they're building up to, it just mismatched, especially having him come back, but we miss a bunch of his life and he's fighting Superman for some reason. It just felt like shortcuts to try and catch up the MCU. But if we judge them on their own thing as like these different takes on them, then they are quite interesting movies. It is interesting to do a Superman movie where it's like the refusal of the cord, trying to find his own way thing. And I still really like the intro of Man of Steel, set on Krypton and the fall of Krypton stuff, and like all the stuff with Zod. I still don't like how Superman isn't established in the world before other aliens come. So Zod does that stupid, convenient message to every country in the world, and then suddenly Superman has to go out and find him. That kind of sucks. But then, I've never been a fan. Like, I've always been two minds about the destruction of Metropolis, because one side is, why isn't he getting these people away from the city? But once now viewing it as someone who's like, this is just the nihilism take on Superman, then I can just enjoy the other part of me, which is like, this is the closest thing I'm going to get to a Dragon Ball Z movie. And like, so watching it in that lens and not caring about the civilians of Metropolis, it's interesting. I still think it's I think it tells us a lot about where we were at the time as a society, and how we were trying to deal with these characters, and how after the Chris Nolan Dark Knight trilogy, everybody thought there was only one way to make these movies, and obviously that's compounded in BVS. But like, there's a lot that I've said on cast and off cast about BVS that I don't like. But when viewing it as this is just a run that Zack Snyder and his cinematographer, writer, and I guess Chris Terrio and David Goyer as well are the writers on it. But like, if you treat it like that, like a run, then it is interesting, because again, someone just gave them 200 million just to blow stuff up, and watching it from that thing is like, there's a lot of like cool visuals to do it. And I still to this day I will say that one of Snyder's best inputs is the CGI capes, because it looks cool. Yeah. But like, you enjoying it as this like nihilistic thing where they blow up the Capitol and all this stuff, then it's just like, okay, but it's a hard movie to love, because for all the stuff where it's like, it's trying to do something deeper here, it's trying to talk about like heroes and worship and stuff like that. That stuff just falls apart when they have stupid stuff like the Martha stuff, or like just Dark Side, or just Diana getting off the plane and being like, I'm going to be Wonder Woman. Stuff like that. It's just this is dumb. Like, I was willing to take you on your own terms, and then you just pulled me out again. But yeah, I mean, all in all, it's been I'm going to say enjoyable retrospective. I'm not going to watch Suicide Squad again, and I think that's far enough removed from Snyder. I don't need to. And the next time I watch Justice League, it will be the Snyder Cut. So, and I'll probably watch Aquaman and Shazam again, but I feel like they're way more removed, so that's why I didn't really include them in this Snyderverse retrospective. But yeah, have you watched them again anytime recently? Like these three movies in particular?
Yeah, actually, I've not recently, but a few months ago. I'm a BVS apologist, as you know.
Yeah.
So
nobody's perfect.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I mean, I'm not going to get into that now, but yeah, me and Sophie quite enjoyed BVS, and we really like Wonder Woman. Not too hot on Justice League.
No, that's understandable.
Yeah, I really like Aquaman, actually. I thought that was good fun.
Yeah, I enjoyed Aquaman.
Yeah.
I'd say that Wonder Woman and Aquaman are
the
best of the DCEU currently.
I think I quite enjoyed Man of Steel. I think I enjoyed the way the film opens, and I like the stuff with the, him trying to keep his powers under wraps when he's on the oil rig and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that stuff was cool. And the little bit of Chris Cornell that popped up in there when he,
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff. So that's like playing into my thing anyway. But yeah, I quite like those films. And when the Snyder Cut rolls around, we'll probably get deep into it anyway.
Yeah.
Because we're probably going to watch the Snyder Cut and talk about it on here. In fact, I can guarantee we're probably going to watch the Snyder.
We have to. That's going to be a cultural event.
Yeah.
Well, I mean that with no irony.
Cultural with a capital C.
Yes, that is it's going to shift the axis of the planet. The internet.
Oh my God,
is going to stop. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah,
and I really hope that the Snyder Cut is amazing. To be honest,
the Snyder Cut is just the anti-life equation, and
Yeah. To be honest, after 2020, I'm ready for it. Bring it.
Snyder is. Yeah. So yeah, like I was saying, this kind of like feeds into one of the comics that we read today. So I'm going to talk about my little silent film excursion now. So I've been watching some silent films, like I'm talking films that are like nearly or are 100 years old or over 100 years old, which is quite mind-blowing when you think about it. So these are sort of like films from the 1920s, silent classic films, German expressionism, that kind of thing. One of the films that I watched is a film called Häxan, which is Häxan is the Swedish word for witch, and that is called The Witches or Witchcraft Through the Ages. I was looking for silent horror movies when I was doing this, so this is me looking for something spooky, trying to spook myself.
Yeah, what got you on this track anyway?
It's a long story. It starts with a real Ghostbusters episode called The Cabinet of Caligari.
Okay.
And from there, it's just me on a wiki walk and deciding that I wanted to check out some silent horror movies. And I started it with the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, which we're going to come on to in a moment. But this was Häxan, which was a 1922 silent film about witchcraft and the persecution of witches through the ages. It draws a lot of info from the Malleus Maleficarium, which is a book that served as a sort of guide for Catholic inquisitors on methods of torture for obtaining confessions and from so believed witches, and also methods of execution. It was directed by a guy called Benjamin Christensen, and for its time, I can actually imagine it had quite a progressive view, because the film looks at how fear and hysteria of the witch hunts possibly stemmed from superstition and a misunderstanding of mental illness, among other things, I wager. It has horror sequences blended in with documentary-style demonstrations and explanations. And it has quite a sympathetic view towards the mentally ill for its time. And it talks about, towards the end of the film, how maybe, this was, the misunderstanding of people that were mentally ill, and these people need to be treated with compassion, etc. And we have sanitariums for dealing with them now, which back then sanitariums were still horrible, horrible places. I mean, we're still pre-lobotomy, by the way, because the first lobotomy didn't take place until 1935, and that was it was called a leucotomy back then. It wasn't called a lobotomy. It didn't get called a lobotomy until an American guy took it and ran with it, and caused a lot of damage in the process. There was a Portuguese neurologist called Antonio Egas Moniz, is credited with inventing the lobotomy, and he won a Nobel Prize for it, which they tried to revoke because clearly inflicting brain damage on people is not fixing anything. I mean, these guys had no idea what they were doing. They were just taking parts of people's brains out. And
just experimenting on people.
Yeah, it was horrible. But so I mean, we're still before all of that. So obviously things aren't great for people that are mentally ill, but this film has has a sympathetic view for its time, I think, considering it's nearly 100 years old. And it was quite interesting to see like how they did horror back then with like costumes and the effects they used and things like that, because they used a lot of what looked like paper mache models and makeup and things, and it's actually quite effective. It's actually a really good little piece. I quite enjoyed it. Other than that, I watched the Cabinet of Caligari. So yeah, in my recent discoveries of silent cinema, I take an interest in silent horror movies, and I've been sort of slowly working my way through a list. The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, I watched it and I thoroughly enjoyed it, and subsequently I discovered it has a comic adaptation published through Amigo Comics, which is a Spanish independent publisher that publishes creator-owned comics. The adaptation is solely the work of Juan Diego Olmos. What the art does here is like, so you read this as well, right, Liam?
I did, yes.
Yeah, so into the comics. So like what the art does here is it expertly captures the twisted and fraught nightmare vision of the 1920s German expressionistic classic. And it's like this stark black and white exaggerated expression, this warped perspective as if everything is closing in, all the buildings are bent round and things like that. The only way I can describe it, and this is probably how most of these paintings were made, these expressionistic paintings and these expressionist things, is like somebody with anxiety has got a mad absinthe drunk on. That's
Absinthe.
You see where I'm coming from?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So that's my take on it. So if I just give you the blurb from the comic, which basically describes the premise of the film as well. Town called Holstonwall. The carnival has arrived to Holstonwall, and with it the mysterious sideshow of the Dr. Caligari and the sleepwalker Césaire, the somnambulist, who can foresee the future, and a shocking wave of murders terrify the city and will take young fiancée Frances into a spiral of death and madness. So it's about this young man and his trip to the carnival, and the carnival arriving in his hometown with this very strange sideshow of this sleepwalker that can supposedly tell the future, and the kind of like weird nightmare that kind of spirals out of that with these murders that are going on in the town, and this character called Dr. Caligari, this enigmatic kind of like sideshow host / doctor type thing. It's just everything in this film, in this comic is like, it captures the spirit of the film perfectly. If you get the chance to watch the film, please watch it, because it's absolutely excellent. But down to the way they use the makeup and lighting in the film, because the comic is in stark black and white. There's no shadow, and the film looks exactly like that. I don't know if that is intentional or if that is just a symptom of the equipment that was available at the time. It's really effective.
I believe it's like intentional in ways while using the stuff at the time, because the makeup was done to accentuate the like shadows and stuff like that.
It's really effective, and the way that translates to the comic is really good. I want to get into the complete strangeness of the somnambulist, because it's sort of, for me, it taps into some kind of like deep primal fear of being in an unconscious state and at someone else's command. Like, the whole tale is told here across 2 issues, and it is gorgeously alive. And just this weird, twisted figure kind of like lumbering around under some kind of control in this kind of like permanent sleep state. There's just something completely nightmarish and strange about that. Something that still resonates today, even though that film is 100 years old. Like, even though this is 100 years old, that fear still translates today. This is something that still keeps and still can produce an effect on the audience now, I guess. The years haven't dulled this. And yeah, I mean, What's your opinion on that, Leon?
Yeah, because so like with the film, I've seen the film twice, and they were both within the same period back when I was in school. So this is like last time I saw it was around maybe 17 years ago or something like that. Maybe, yeah. So almost 2 decades ago, last time I saw this movie. But this movie's a classic. And I haven't rewatched it again in the run-up to this podcast, but I do want to. But yeah, this movie's a classic. And the thing that always stuck with me was obviously the German expressionist like visuals, all the set design, or these matte paintings for the backgrounds, and just this whole reality which is sharp and jagged and has you sort of at an angle, and has you not quite on sure footing, and as you said, like high contrast, big shadows, all of that is the stuff that stuck with me, as well as them using the term somnambulist like a million times, which always chuckled me because it's a funny word to say. But like reading the book, what I thought the book did amazingly straight away was the use of, because it's like a black and white comic, but it's like negative because the pages are black and it's like the white is used to create the images amongst the black, if you know what I mean. And that gives it that, instead of it just being like monochromatic, it does give it that high contrast, big shadowy visual, even though, as you say, there's not it's not like shadings used or anything like that. So it has this really striking look, and just certain panels are good at like recreating, but not fully mimicking images from the film. And like everything is, because it was obviously a silent movie as well, everything's quite broad and big, and like it's composed to give a striking image, because all the images speak more than 1,000 words. They have to convey so much in between the titles, and I think they do a really good job of it here, while not going over the top. Though part of me was like, oh, I could deal with some more of this. Like, give me more perpendicular sets and stuff like that. And by the time they got to the rooftops, I was like, yes, this is the stuff, because that's the stuff that's burnt in my mind, the rooftop chase. But like, I think they handle it well. And like, one of the things that I forgot, having not seen it in 20 years, is the framing device. So I almost was thinking, like, oh, this is a cool way to do a comic based on this, is to add this framing device. And then got to the end, I was like, oh no, that was in it. But like, I think it is really good because, like I was saying, it doesn't just feel like, this is the movie, here's a comic of the movie. I think it does strike its own path, and it works to the strengths of the comic book medium, while being influenced by the strengths of the cinematic medium. And I think that what you get is a good marriage of those two things. That and this is all me just talking about the form, but like, I think that all does elevate the themes and the general concept of this story of really. I know it's like, because the way I was speaking to you about it when you had told me you're watching it, is that like it's like this awful like dark puppetry, with like an eye into like the occult, because not obviously, but the somnambulist is able to tell the future and but like the idea of it, which is backed out by all the mise en scène, is how the whole thing feels like a a dream state. Things are quite hazy, and it's people trying to make sense of what's going on.
This is what I mean when I was saying, like, imagine you've had too much absinthe and you go to sleep, and this is what you have playing on the back of your eyelids until you wake up, kind of thing. It's like, that's how I view it anyway. But yeah, this whole fraught nightmare vision.
What is apparent and what like comes back is all the things to do with like the theming. Because if you remember when this came out, it was like it was after World War One, and there's been. I remember I watched this in school, so we did media studies on it and stuff. So like from what I remember of that time, there's a lot in there to do with like sort of pushback against authority and the somnambulist Cesar sort of being like a stand-in for like soldiers who are like forced into places by like politician Caligaris and commander Caligaris to do the bidding of them, and it's sort of that lack of sort of that loss of humanity as you're sort of commanded to go out and kill. There's a lot of like I think that one's quite naked in terms of it's relating to it, and the Caligari figure himself is quite he's like tyrannical but also sort of mischievous, and yeah, it's weird because once you add back in like the framing device things, it does also add like a another sort of twist on it, because it's also this idea of especially considering when it came out, it's this idea of like creating this own reality for yourself, and how basically means that all of life can be subjective to a degree, because if you are sort of trapped, as you feel, trapped in an asylum, you'll grab things from your surroundings and create a reality which seeks to make sense of it all for you. And I do like how this is like an early example of that.
But yeah, it's it just I like the way it's been adapted. I like the page layouts. I like the dialogue choices. I feel it works fantastically well in the comic medium, and I think it does do the film justice. For me, it captures the spirit quite well. There's something so cool about the fact that the film is 100 years old and it can still produce such an effect on the audience. Like me, when I'm watching it, and the comic's the same. It's this is a 100-year-old story, adapted from a film and adapted in such a way as to retain the effects of the film. And the years haven't dulled it, and it just, I appreciate it for that reason. I appreciate it for the fact that the years have not dulled this at all. Like, it is still as sharp as ever in the way that it can produce an effect on its audience. And it's like, I mean, you can watch, I mean, things that were frightening. Like, it's strange because you can watch like you can get a horror story from the 70s and you can read it now, and it's not as, it's like we've become desensitized to things, but we've not become desensitized to the ideas that are put forward and the nightmare that is put forward in this film.
Yeah, and I think that speaks to, like, for me personally, when it comes to horror, the stuff affects me most is the stuff that is more psychological, and
yeah, exactly,
the stuff where you can sort of bring in parts of your life to it. So I'll never be scared. It's going to vary for everyone, but I'm never going to be scared of like a masked killer, like hunting me down and taking my friends out one by one. That's or like some unstoppable walking machine doing that. But then the idea of slowly losing your grip on reality. Stuff like that is scary, where like it's not so much supernatural elements having an input in your life, but it's like your brain making you think the supernatural elements are having it. Like elements like that, because it is so believable because it happens, but it's also it's scary because it's I think it links to that whole thing as well of you know, like everyone's obsessed with like thinking, are we in a simulation or not? And like if that was to be found out that we were, obviously it would change everything, because there'd be definitive knowledge that we have no control over anything. And I think that's like a scary thing when it comes to psychological horror, because it is a case of like, what if you lose your grip on reality, or worse so, reality loses its grip on you and you go flying.
So that is the Cabinet of Cagliari, the Cabinet of Dr. Cagliari.
Yeah, put some respect on his name. He got that PhD.
Or did he? Read the comic or watch the film and find out. But yeah, the comic's fantastic. I recommend it to anyone. So this is by Diego Olmos, and this is published by Amigo Comics, which are a Spanish independent outfit. So go check that out. It's cool. And I got into high art through cartoons. So that's just because I watched an episode of the Ghostbusters called The Cabinet of Caligari as a child, and I kind of like fun bit of trivia. The name was based on the Cabinet of Dr. Cagliari, and the film, the cartoon itself, The Cabinet of Caligari, has like some really cool nods to surrealist art. It's got like some stuff about like some Dali nods in there and things with his like melting clocks, and it's just really cool. And there's also the ghost of Houdini's in it, so yeah, get you some history of magicians performing and escape artists and such. Moving on from there, we have a book called Lost Soldiers, which is something that I read. Now, only one of these so far. It came out last week, so that would have been Wednesday the 29th of... Wednesday the 29th of July. And so this is a war story. You could view it as a deconstruction of The Punisher. It's about the effect that war can have on a soldier and the guilt and the trauma that soldier carries for the rest of their life. The story takes place between the main characters' days in Vietnam and their fight. These two mercenaries, these two private contractors now working in Juarez. So they started off in Vietnam and now they're fighting cartels in Juarez, circa 40 years later, which will put it around 2009. And I remember some things going on around 08, 09. A lot of activity between the US and Juarez around then. There's these two, I can only assume they're private contractors and mercenaries. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I tried to do my research, but I couldn't find any official US government or US military activity, if you like, or any reports of any news reports or anything like that about that stuff happening around there. So these are two veterans with a brotherly bond that they've carried all the way through, and also within that, they are bonded by the shared trauma of being in Vietnam together and, you know, the killing and how you never leave that behind and everything else. So if I read you the blurb. So the blurb is literally Vietnam 1969, Juarez 40 years later, 3 men tied by the war they left behind on collision course with a new one. And one of these men is a clear Punisher analog. But I'll come through that in a moment. So it's a meditation on masculinity, on the lot of the warrior and PTSD. It's the brutality of war and how it becomes something that you can't leave behind, something you can't quit, and how you carry the guilt of killing and the horrendous acts with you, how you become a ghost of your former self among other ghosts. How each kill or act of violence will sort of permanently tarnish your soul. how you have to detach yourself from it to survive, and how you have no other option, I guess, in some ways. There's no time to grieve or make choices. You follow orders or be killed, and you are damned by your actions in your own mind for an eternity after. And the fight to escape it and to find something better is also there as well. That's another kind of like branch in this thing, and the kind of the want and the need to leave it behind. So this book is striking in more ways than one. The art is very striking, and the way that it flicks between Vietnam and 2009, and the way that in memories and moments of heated action, the color wash over the panels is like the angry fire of Hades. Like, so as the violence escalates, the colors, it becomes a more heated palette. You get a lot of reds, and you can hear the ring after each gunshot, and you get to experience like the narrowed, hyper-defined adrenaline vision of one of the characters, Hawkins, when he's in the middle of a firefight and afterwards, and how it affects him, and seeing the death of his comrades and things like that. And I do love the way that the book deconstructs anti-heroes like the Punisher, and even shows us what I consider to be a Punisher analog, a character simply referred to as Burke. He looks like Frank Castle. He's got like the boxer-looking face, you know, like the bent nose and everything, the black hair. And I guess you could kind of view this book as a reply to Punisher Platoon.
Was that one from last year?
Yeah, I talked about it. I think it was called, because I like my Punisher. Yeah, Punisher the Platoon. Yeah, 2017 that was, not last year. So 2 years ago. Wow.
That's 3 years ago, Greg. 3 years ago.
Oh my gosh, yeah. But I'm sure we covered it on Cast. What is time anyway, Leon? What is time? But yeah, it's you could view it as a reply to that, where Punisher the Platoon was telling the story of Frank Castle's first kill in his days in Nam, leading a group of soldiers, and it's them talking about him. So these soldiers are meeting up for a drink in a bar, and they're telling stories to a reporter or somebody who's writing a book about Frank Castle. And you could view it as a reply to that, I guess, in this first issue at least, where it feels like a maybe more realistic view of that, rather than them singing this guy's praises. Like, because a character like that, a guy like the Punisher, a guy like Frank Castle, would be quite zealous and reckless. So what they've done here, this guy called Burke, he's a brutal, unflinching man. He's a bully, he's stone cold, he's unfeeling, and he's willing to sacrifice his own men in this story from what we see. And it feels like it's this is kind of like what the Punisher would be in the real world, if you understand me. Like a kind of a more realistic view of a man like Frank Castle, and a more
rounded
and a more rounded view of a man like Frank Castle, and possibly how things may, you know, a man like Frank Castle would actually function. And yeah, the whole thing is very cinematic in its presentation. It has some and the realism in there, and the shadows it uses and everything else within the panels. The pace of it is great, and it doesn't lose you at all as it switches from one timeline to another. So you're able to keep up with it, and you don't have to go back and forth. Like, sometimes I find that when comics flick between two timelines, page by page, when you're dipping in and out of people's memories, sometimes I find I have to go back to go forward. So I have to go back a page and go forward. It kind of takes me out of it a little bit.
You have to like anchor yourself a little bit.
Yeah. And I'm not sure if that's just me or if that's something that a lot of people experience, but I sometimes find that I have that difficulty. But with this, I didn't. It was seamless. It flowed for me, which is really cool. And yeah, I just thought it was an awesome read, and it's going to be 5 issues long. So that's going to be something to look out for.
For like, having read the first issue, what overall would you say that the take it offers about what is novel, or is it a refinement of previous like war is hell, anti-war stories you've seen before?
I would say it's more in the war is hell queue.
So
along the lines of other Vietnam films
Yeah.
that you may have seen, things like Apocalypse Now, that type
but
of
just
stuff.
like using that stuff to sort of hammer home the message.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but less about the actual being in war and the acts that men commit while they're at war, and more about what being at war does to a man.
Yeah, the toll.
And what the acts, what the acts a man commits in war, in time of war, the killing, the other unspeakable acts, what that leaves you with years later. So it's more about that, and more about the trauma and the ghosts that you carry with you, if you like you carry each kill with you. Like, you don't just forget about these things, you know.
Yeah.
Every time you take a life, that's part of your soul gone as well. I kind of think is the message here.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is how it is. I can't say it's I can't say it's the happiest reading in the world. But maybe if you're having some, because obviously it's a tough year for everybody. Maybe if you're having a tough year, maybe steer clear of this one.
The thing is, though, have you mentioned, like, previously, some people who, like people who are like me, find catharsis through stuff like that. So it might be the actual antidote that people are looking for.
Yeah, I mean, I feel that I have to measure this stuff out, because I don't find comfort in it, because I feel it kind of triggers me a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's a good story though. It's interesting, and it's going to be worth following it for the 5 issues, I think, definitely. Your creative team there. So this is Lost Soldiers, and you've got Alex Kott as the writer. We've talked about some of his other books. Luca Casalanguida is the artist. Heather Marie Lawrence Moore is the color artist here. Aditya Bidikar is the letterer. You've got design by Tom Muller, and Ryan Brewer is the production artist. So that is Lost Soldiers #1, published by Image Comics. Go and check that out. On from there, another one by Image, out on the same day. This was like sort of like a double bill from Image. 2 new releases that I checked out on Wednesday. And I believe you checked this one out as well, Leon?
That I did.
And this is called... Now, how do you say this? Because I want to say it HEDRA, and I'll go into my reasons why.
Is that to do with, like, the shapes?
Yes.
Yeah. See, like, reading it, even though my whole mind has been consumed about how this is about, like, shapes and geometry and stuff, my default is saying HEDRA, but I think you are correct.
Yeah. So I defaulted to HEDRA, and then that became HEDRA. So yeah, I did the thing, but then, like, I've been forcing myself to call it HEDRA all day, so that I don't go on cast and go HEDRA. But no, yeah, it's So HEDRA. This is a wonderful little one-shot book. Primarily plays with a 35 square grid.
Yeah, it is.
So it's
wild.
Like, super experimental.
The only reason it gets away with that, not to knock you off what you're saying, is because it's the artist is also the writer. Because no writer would dare ask another artist to do
this. Yeah, so can you imagine a script for 35 panels per page?
It's unbelievable.
Panel 1, blue. Panel 2, plain blue. Panel 3. Yeah, oh man. So yeah, it's it primarily plays with a 35 square grid. It is page by page. It is silent. There's no dialogue. It's just the power of the images to fuel your mind. It is very experimental. There's a lot of geometry and clean, simple lines going on. A lot of cool concepts at play here. This is prog comics.
I think that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, so I'm coining this as prog comics. So So, if I give you the blurb from the image site, in a glorious exploration of the comics medium with echoes of 2001: A Space Odyssey, Flash Gordon, Chris Ware, and Mobius, a lone astronaut leaves a world ravaged by nuclear war in search of life, but what she finds is beyond all explanation. Now, I don't see the Flash Gordon stuff.
I think I can
the...
see that in the design of like the rockets and stuff.
You see, I err more towards the Mobius thing for that.
Yeah, it's more so.
Yeah, and I can see the 2001 stuff.
Oh yeah, I mean
definitely.
that's on the face of it. I think the Flash Gordon stuff is to do a little bit with some design stuff there.
Yeah,
and that's why I think it ends.
I mean, you'll find Image do this a lot in their blurbs. They like. You've probably noticed this when I've been reading them out, actually. When you go through the official blurbs on the Image site for their comics, they kind of like name drop like films and things that they equate it to. And it's a good sales tactic because anyone that likes Flash Gordon's going to go, oh. But I myself, upon reading this, I think it has more in common with Mobius and 2001: A Space Odyssey. Definitely. For me, anyway. So it's a little cosmic tale about the destruction of a planet that could be Earth through nuclear war, and there's this one lone astronaut who is looking for habitable planets, and she finds complex life, and how she finds the complex life and the journey that goes with it. And you can feel the influences here. It's not a coincidence that because after talking about this, I'm going to move on to a book by a book about somebody called Jack Kirby. You may have heard of him.
No.
Yeah. So yeah, it's because this is something that I feel that this would not be here without Jack Kirby's influence on the medium as well. I can see a lot of Kirby-tastic stuff in here. And I do love it. I love how playfully things move across the page through this 35 panel grid, like perfect geometrical arcs or perfect geometric arcs. Geometrical's not a word, is it?
It is now.
And it makes like patterns and shapes across the page. And you get objects and figures bursting through gutters and into the negative space, into the next square. And that is a really interesting thing that this book does. It makes use of the negative space in super interesting ways. Like movement is communicated by lines of negative space. So it kind of like, imagine each panel, you've got a grid, a 35 square grid, and each panel is a bubble. And then an object like a rocket flies through and pierces several bubbles. And it brings the negative space with it, if you get me. Like tears through. And then when a sword is swung, it tears through. Or when someone is thrown or flies up in the sky, they tear through.
Yeah.
And it's just this beautiful, beautiful way of doing things. It's so effective and alive, actually. And you can see the definite influence of Mobius in the designs of the figures and the technologies and the way the ship and the lone astronaut pilots, for example, like just echoes Mobius's work.
Yeah.
The simplicity of the color palette here is another thing that adds to the beauty of this. And it's almost instructional blueprint design in places. It's very, very mathematical.
Yeah, it does have this very like design document look and at times during some of the panels, which I love.
Yeah. It's a really cool thing to kind of immerse yourself in and lose yourself in and put some chiptune on in the background. Because I mean, like, I would say if you're going to listen to this, if you're going to listen to music while reading this, I'd want something electronic, something low res and electronic, possibly.
Yeah, I can see that.
I don't know about you, Leon. Yeah,
I can see it. It's either a mix. It's either that or it's like some classical music to hit back with 2001, like something something like holy and bombastic that is non-lyrical.
Yeah, because this goes places.
Yeah,
and the kind of the influence of geometry there and the shapes and everything else, it's a beautiful piece of art. It is. And I would say it's probably, I'd say it's quite groundbreaking. I don't know about you.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I would say this is one of the best comic books I've read in a long time. And we read a lot of good comic books for this show.
We do.
But like this, from the cover, I thought anything usually, I'm a mark for if you have a cover where it's like it shows a rocket taking off, and then the colors are all this like sort of low tone with like and a dark navy purple-ish, and there's a rocket taking off, and it has that sort of 40s, 50s space age look. I'm gonna open the page. You know, I'm gonna open the page. That's me. It's what happens. And then if the first page was the first couple of pages just has arcs and then like mushroom clouds, I'm gonna keep turning pages. But I think that had it just been like, okay, cool, this is like this is a 2001 and Mobius inspired book, blah blah blah. That would have been fine enough. And say it was just done more standardly with less panels per page and I don't know, exposition, blah blah. It would be like it'd be enjoyable enough. But the fact that there's not one spoken word in this whole bit, the fact that at times following the panels, it's like playing snakes and ladders, where like you're just going up, you're going down, and you're just following it, and there's no arrow telling you where to go. It's just the shape of the panel indicates the direction you should be going, just by there being one curved edge or something like that. It just for me this is a joy to read, because I echo everything you said about the design, the color palette, just how everything is staged and look, and like geometry being a big one. Like earlier on, there is a page which is like after this like nuclear holocaust that has happened, and the way how a lot of it's been presented at this point is either the way I can best explain it is like, say you have an image and you put an image down on a table, and then on top of that image you start to do a jigsaw puzzle, and someone else comes later and starts to remove bits of that jigsaw puzzle and notices there's an image under. That's what it kind of has that feeling of, where and that sort of replicates the feeling for me of, say, in a visual medium like a movie or a television show, when you get like silent or wordless jump cuts to like another setting, and they don't tell you anything, but it's like, it would be like in these earlier pages, you see a mushroom cloud in silence, and then you'd cut to the destruction, and then you cut back to another one, and then you cut back to destruction elsewhere. Like it has this thing where it starts to, and obviously the whole thing is like, the more panels you have, the sort of higher the pace is going to be, because there's something new happening. There's more new things happening per page than normal, and this plays with that in such a cool way, because you'll still have the grid in ways, but at times it will just be like you're behind a pane or something, like a window, because sometimes it's just the same image with the gutters in your way, and then different squares are the different actions that are happening, and then beyond that, like 3 or 4 of the squares are one big image behind the other images. So like it all just sort of like it just comes alive in its own way, and it at times it feels like it echoes out from one panel. And like I was saying earlier on, there's a page where it's during all the destruction, and then at the top of the page, the panels are all one image behind the gutters, and it's like a ravaged like cityscape. And then below that is an image of like a tractor and someone like planting seeds, with all like the like dust and smoke behind them. But then the tractor and the person are in front of the gutters, while the background is behind the gutters, and it's just so they sort of, it gives the image depth, because they're sort of like there, like the tractor's a person, but like the two things, the person and the thing, are in the foreground, and they're given so much depth by just doing that. But then there's just like other cool things, like when we see the rocket, it's broken down as if you bought it from IKEA and you're going to build it. There's so much, because there's no dialogue, all of it is just done with such economical but clean visuals. So like there's a lottery. I'm not going to describe the whole story, don't worry, but that there's a lottery to decide who who gets to go into space. And the way that whole sequence is done, the way how certain panels are like, most of them are squares and then some are circles, and the way that all relates to each other, the way how there's two panels where it's like the same person's face, but it shows such a jumping time that it just feels that's why I get like big 2001 vibes, because obviously a big famous thing of that movie is that it has a match-on shape that it spans a million years in one cut, and this obviously is not as dramatic, but it still has the snappy, clean thing of like, boom, like things are happening, and so much is conveyed without us having to be told the nitty-gritty. Like, everything you need is on the page, and it is doing all this while still having space, because it has so many panels, to truly warp your mind with all these cool shapes.
For sure. My favorite page in this, I will refer to simply as Cube World.
Oh yeah.
Because I don't want to spoil it, but yeah.
No, that is striking, because it's something where I think you've seen elements of it before elsewhere, but not all wrapped up in that way. So that when you first see Cube World, your mind is kind of blown, because it's just like, this is like, because I think one of the problems you often get with like alien stuff, and I don't mean alien as an extraterrestrial, but also I do, but like stuff that's just not of Earth in a way, which I guess is extraterrestrial anyway. But one of the problems with that is always quite humanoid, and it's always quite like, it's like the Star Trek kind of thing, where it's like, yeah, they're kind of like us, but they just wear weird clothes and all have like pointy ears or something like that, and
bony growths on their forehead.
Yeah. And so when you get something like a Cube World, it kind of like, because the geometry there is completely different, it just changes how you comprehend of how they live, which is cool. Because like, it's hard to talk about some of these things, but like, one of my favorite like 2 pages is where, I'm just going to say, it's one of those pages where the gutters are being broken through by something as the rocket flies through space. And then there's a cool, it's page to page, there's a cool bit where, so we've got all the 35 panel grid structure, which is at times less than that, because sometimes the images will be larger and then the boxes will just all be combined into one. But then you have a cool one too, where they seemingly put someone behind the gutters when for the whole time they've been on top. And it has this cool idea of like, it just conveys so much like isolation and sort of feeling like sort of trapped and imprisoned when seeing the freedom of something outside, which is as fake as that can be. And it's so effective, and it's just so seemingly simply conveyed that this whole book just was blow my mind constantly.
And they do this really cool thing where there's another cool page, another cool moment where they explain how 2 objects land on a planetoid.
Yes.
And they land at opposite sides of the planetoid, like one on the South Pole and one on the North Pole.
So good.
And they flip the page upside down, and it's gorgeous.
It's so good. Even the preceding stuff with going up to the landing of that with all the sort of orbits and all that. It's really good.
And so this is a book called HEDRA. It is a one-shot. It is by a singular artist and writer. We've got a lot of one-man bands going on today. This is Jesse Lonergan. So Jesse Lonergan did this, and it's published by Image Comics, and you can check it out now.
And I'll just add that on top of that all, obviously the rocket design, the location design, like the planets and structures and stuff, and the character design is all really, really cool. It's all my jam.
So, last thing on our list today is something that I read, which I picked up, because this is This is something that I think has been something that we've needed for a long, long time. And I'm glad that it finally exists. This is Jack Kirby, The Epic Life of the King of Comics. Now, this is by Tom Cioli, entirely the work of Tom Cioli, lettering, art, colours, everything. Writing. This is published by 10 Speed Press, which are part of Crown Publishing. And let's get into it. So you cannot deny how important Jack Kirby was to the medium. We've talked about Jack Kirby's contributions to comics on this show in previous episodes, and I will often bang on at length, especially when I've got a few drinks in me, about how his work and about how his work has given us comics as we know them today. Without his work, comics as we know them today might not exist. What we have here is a biography of sorts. The story of the life of Jack Kirby, meticulously researched and told through excerpts from interviews and other books and sources, compiled into a graphic novel with love and care by one Tom Cioli. Now, Tom Cioli, we've dropped his name before in reference to the Marvel book Fantastic Four Grand Design, which he worked on. He has a very distinctive style. It's this beautiful cartoon style that has a lot in common with the art we see in Silver and Golden Age comics. His work is aged intentionally to give it this warm analog feel. It has a nostalgic aesthetic that I think works very well for this kind of story. He has a very dense style, which lets him pack large amounts of information into a relatively economical space. So what this is a biography. It is a graphic biography of the life of Jack Kirby from his early childhood, his parents coming to the US from Austria, his early childhood right up to his death. So it packs a lot of information in there. His entire career in comics is covered in this. And yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful story, and it's really good to finally have all of this in one place. Like, I mean, you can watch the interviews, you can read the other excerpts in the interviews and things like that, and you can, but to have it all kind of like condensed into one book, into one hardback, is really cool. I love that the way he does this. He keeps the design of Jack himself a little more abstract than the other figures in the story. He highlights him as someone special and keeps him looking forever hopeful and wide-eyed. The character of Jack in the story, the way he draws Jack Kirby, for the most part, he has large blue eyes that seem to be like hopeful and like gleaming and young. Like it basically just paints him as a man with ideas beyond his time that will outlast generations. In the same way that we all have this inner image of ourselves and imagine ourselves as forever young. This is what's going on with Jack here in the story. And it's a beautiful moment where Jack looks in the mirror and realizes that he isn't a young man anymore. And his reflection is a more realistic representation in line with the rest of the characters in the book, with the rest of the cast. So, I mean, this book is trips through people's memories. It is in first person, as if you're talking to someone around a dinner table and they're telling you these stories. We get from Jack's point of view, we get from a little bit from Stan Lee's point of view, and stuff like that. It's in a similar way to the way that the Fantastic Four Grand Design books are put together and laid out, in that we're getting these stories told by each member of the Fantastic Four. So you've got some of it in Sue's voice, some of it in Ben's voice, some of it in Johnny's voice, and some of it in Reed's voice. So it's that kind of thing. And there's like a portion of it in Jack's voice, a portion of it in Jack's wife's voice, a portion of it in Stanley's voice, etc. And it's trips through people's memories in a bygone era in first person. It's anecdotes from the early days of the industry. It was wonderful to learn more about the man that was basically the second genesis of everything I hold dear to my heart and soul. So yeah, I mean, like, through this book, we learn about his childhood, his earliest days in his career of comics, his time in the army, his most important work at Marvel and DC, and all the frustration and anguish that came with it. His struggle for recognition, like his whole life, it seemed that all he wanted was what was his. He wanted to be recognized properly. He wanted to be compensated fairly. Like, you can see how hard this man worked, and through this story, you can see how the industry basically chewed him up and spat him out. I mean, he poured his heart and soul into everything that he did, and he used his experiences, his traumas, his sadness, his anger, and his joy, and he channeled it into his work. And there's a quote from Jack Kirby, actually, that I feel is quite relevant right now, to the way this story paints how he worked and how he channeled everything he had into his work. I feel that my characters all have some part of my character. I feel that they're all me in some way. Certainly not in individuality, but they all bear elements of what I feel. So, in creating characters like the Silver Surfer and things like that, he has, he puts a little bit of himself into everything. And yeah, I mean, you can see that in telling this story, Tom Cioli has poured his heart and soul into this work, and it really is a labor of love. It really does do justice to the memory of Jack Kirby, I feel. For someone like me running a humble podcast like this out of the pure and undying love for the comics medium, a book like this is pure gold, plain and simple. And I recommend it to anybody. I think you should check it out, Leon.
Yeah. Cool. I did want to try and get it read for this episode, but I couldn't make it work. But the thing with Jack Kirby is that I know like broad strokes about him, but I don't know, like, not even the nitty gritty. I don't know some of the connecting tissue with even some of the bigger, more famous things that he's done. So I feel like it will be very informative for me.
Yeah, it's a good story. I mean, like, it tells you in the front of the book that this is by no means an official biography. It's not like, Marvel have had no input, DC have had no input, Jack's estate have had no input. This is all just the work of Tom Cioli, and this is him drawing from millions of different sources and researching it quite meticulously, the events and what happened where and how it might have happened and things like that, and all the stuff that went on, the stuff that famously went on between Jack Kirby and Marvel.
Yeah.
All of that and everything else, and his kind of like frustrations with Stan and everything. It's all in there, so it's worth checking it out. It's a good book, and for any comics fan, totally worth it. And yeah, I mean, like, I can't say I knew everything about Jack Kirby before checking this out. I can't say I was like an expert or anything, but yeah, it's eye-opening and it's enlightening. And if you have any questions you may have had about Jack Kirby at all, like, can be answered by this book, I guess, in a way. So yeah, it's interesting, and it's good that this now exists and can be on the bookshelf, and it's something that it's a part of history, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's cool.
It's kind of wild because it's almost like I'm trying to think of like even the appropriate some person in a different medium who's like so influential. But
say you had a book about Van Gogh.
Yeah, I guess so. But like even then, it's like I feel like more of Van Gogh's influence is more apparent than a character like Kirby, who is super influential, but like seemingly sidelined in terms of perceived influence, which is incredible and wild.
Yeah, exactly. You cannot deny this man's influence. Like, I'd say he was more important than any of them, I think, back then. I'd like to say that anyway. I'd like to be able to say that. And like, I guess maybe you could compare it to having a book about like if you had a book about the life of a famous director, a really influential director, maybe.
I think part of it, what I was thinking just now, is maybe it's as if like if you had a book talking about like the sort of rock and roll pioneers, the sort of black artists from like the 30s, 40s, and 50s who like pioneered it before it was like taken over in the mainstream, and then white artists like Elvis and the Stones and so on gained the popularity from that. But maybe it's sort of akin to that, where it's like, even though that stuff is like instrumental and core, the general public doesn't really know too much about those pioneers.
Yeah, I in fact, I would exactly say that. It's along those kind of lines, yeah. But that is Jack Kirby, The Epic Life of the Kim Comics. You can pick that up. I've got a really nice hardback. You can pick it up. It's available in most places where books are sold. That is by Tom Cioli, and that is published on 10 Speed Press, which are part of Crown Publishing. And that brings us to the end of our comics for today. And if we move on to the pull list now. So the pull list is pretty stark right now. Checking over the next 2 weeks, there's not an awful lot that I'm too massively excited for. But what I did want to bring up, and what I was discussing with Leon, like pre-cast, is the fact that they are bringing Lock and Key back. Lock and Key's back again for a 3-issue series. This is Lock and Key in Pale Battalions Go. And this is a 3-issue series that is part of the Lock and Key Golden Age stuff. So this is going to fall under the same kind of bracket, along with everything like Open the Moon, Guide to the Known Keys, Grindhouse, Small World, Dog Days, which we talked about on the cast last year. During this discussion, that came up, and I couldn't believe that was last year, but it was. It was the end of last year. So yeah, this is in Pale's Battalion Go, and there's going to be 3 of these. So that's worth looking out for. And that is going to be somewhere around the 26th of August. So in shops, 26th of August, 2020.
Soon.
Yeah. And so, I mean, if it's safe for you to go to your local comic shop right now, then I would suggest going to your LCS to pick this up. If it's not safe to go to your LCS and you really want to read it, grab it digitally. But I put preference on grabbing a hard copy over digital right now because they need your money.
Yeah.
The comic shops need your money to stay alive right now. So yeah, especially with everything that's going on with COVID, with the I mean, in Britain, with the intermittent shutdowns of everything, and how that's going to hit the economy. If you can get to your LCS safely, and you can do things safely, if your LCS is open, then do go grab a hard copy. Now, other things on the list, I wanted to check out Dark Knight's Death Metal, and this is something I've wanted to check out. This is something that started while Leicester was still under quarantine rules, and I didn't manage to pick it up, and I didn't buy it digitally, and I feel like I've missed the boat a little bit, and now I'm kind of like, I'm not going to bother with this now till it's a trade.
Yeah.
But
sometimes
on my on my pull list, I've got Dark Knight's Death Metal, Legends of the Dark Knights, which is basically a collection of tales from this Dark Knights event that's happening right now, which if I read this out, Leon's brain's going to blow up because it's just going to... So I'm going to read this from the Wikipedia page. Following the final battle between Batman and the Batman Who Laughs, the Source Wall is shattered, causing a chain of events that frees Perpetua from her cosmic prison. Despite Apex Lex capturing the Batman Who Laughs, the latter reveals that the future Lex saw was a hoax made by Perpetua in order to manipulate him after his revelation. Perpetua strips Lex from his powers and returns him to Earth. Meanwhile, the Justice League survived their battle with Perpetua after they were saved by the Quintessence, who revealed that they were protecting something very important and then sent the League to an unknown location in order to search it. Somewhere, Tempest Fuginaut revives several Earths from the Dark Multiverse and then recruits Wally West to access Metron's Mobius chair, which is upgraded with Dr. Manhattan's powers, to restore the balance between the light and dark multiverses. This action causes Wally to become a new persona, and with his new powers, he wants to mend all of reality into one single timeline, but the presence of the Batman Who Laughs prevents that from happening.
I'm just gonna read HEDRA again. That was all too much for me.
So that's the lead up to it.
Yeah,
that's everything that leads up to this. And then like
I can't do
the main
this.
story itself is going to be like they're calling it the Anti-Crisis. Okay, that's all you need to know.
I just can't. I can't do.
DC
I can't deal with this stuff. I can't deal.
I'm buying the trade. I'm buying the trade.
How many supplementary comics are you going to need around that?
Oh, jeez. I'm not even gonna like. This is why I'm buying the trade. I'm just gonna wait for them to collect it all into one big old softback, and I'm gonna buy that right now because I think I've missed too much for it to be like a viable thing for me to collect anymore, and I can't be bothered with going back searching for everything. And I mean, sometimes I get tired of that stuff too. I mean, it doesn't sound like I ever do, but sometimes I do. So yeah.
But I mean,
I will come back to
what
it.
version of Greg is that? Is this Apex Greg? Is this the future fake Greg?
This is enhanced with Manhattan powers, Greg. This is
Oh god, no. Stop right now.
But yeah, no, I'm yeah. So yeah, I'm gonna go to Mars and then come back from Mars when the trade's available. And I can read it all at once because I'm not going to dive into it now. I just want the whole thing start to finish as one saga, basically. I'm not going to dive in now where it's at. So other things on the pull list, we've got Ice Cream Man number 20. These are all out on the 5th of the 8th, by the way. And we've also got Alien, the original screenplay. So what Dark Horse have done is they've got an adaptation going on of the original screenplay of Alien. So a comic adaptation of the screenplay before it became a movie, adapted from the original 1976 Dan O'Bannon screenplay.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so this is going to be something to look out for and maybe check out. So, en route back to Earth, the crew of the starship Snark intercepts an alien transmission. Their investigation leads them to a desolate planetoid, a crashed alien spacecraft, and a pyramidic structure of unknown origin. And then the terror begins. So that's out on August 5th. So that's going to be something to look out for. I might be checking that out. It sounds wildly different from the actual Alien film.
Yeah, I can't remember the production history of this or like the script version.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be interesting. I do like the idea of adapting stuff from scripts.
But like from a script that hasn't seen the light of day.
Yeah.
It makes it even better, doesn't it? There's another. This is like so. Ice Cream Man number 20. It just says here that the title of the story is For Kids, and then we've got like this little poem thing going on, which is 1 fish, 2 fish, red fish, blue fish, 3 fish, 4 fish, have some more fish, 5 fish, 6 fish, are you sickish? 7 fish, 8 fish, it's getting late, fish. 9 fish, 10 fish, everyone you love will die and life is pointless, so why even get out of bed, you little worm, you sick little insect, with your sad flailing arms and creepy crawly legs. My God, I've never seen such a pathetic specimen of how sad, how truly tragic red fish, blue fish. So make of that what you will.
Yeah, and it's like reading someone's live journal.
Yeah. The cover is good old Rick in his Ice Cream Man uniform, sitting there in a chair with some photographs of some weird stuff, like close-ups of eyes and things, looking at what appears to be a children's book, and there's a bunch of skulls in a fire behind him. So it's pretty creepy. And I'm looking forward to that. Yeah, and that wraps up the pull list. Oh, so I'm also going to be delving into some older comics, by the way. I've got these Batman Elseworlds books because I feel like I've been reading too much. I feel like I've been getting too high art recently. Yeah, and I feel like I need to...
Yeah, you got to turn that way down.
I need to tone it down a bit. So I'm going to be back on my Greg bullshit with my Batman Elseworlds collection. I've got, and I'll be catching up on all the books I've missed, all my huge stack of comics that I bought when my LCS finally opened. So yeah, That has been Ace Comicals episode 93. You can find us at www.acecomicals.com. Kind of the hub for everything we do. You can find us to listen to us on pretty much anywhere you can find a podcast, Spotify, Stitcher, Pocket Cast, etc., Apple Podcasts. You can find us on Twitter at Ace Comicals. You can get in touch via our Twitter account. You can at us. You can get involved in the conversation. If you have any opinions about the things we've discussed, then drop us a bell. Let us know. Tell us what you think. If you have any questions that you want us to answer on cast, get in touch and we'll have some fun questions from you. You can send us questions and feedback to acecomicals@gmail.com. We have a Facebook page, facebook.acecomicals. If you are so inclined, you can donate the price of a coffee to keep the lights on here at Ace Comicals, which is kofi.com/acecomicals. We have t-shirts for sale, which is acecomicals.threadless.com. You can find me on Twitter under @Batto, BATTOU. Leon, where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Leon Everett, and I just want to add in an RIP to the legendary John Lewis, and also screw you, Comicsgate.
Indeed. And that has been Ace Comicals, episode 93. Ace Comicals, over and out.